The Persephone Foundation. Timeline Archives. Timeline designation Pi Kappa-001. Refranchism. The 1871 Franco-Prussian War not only led to a strengthened and unified German Empire, but also to a weakened French Third Republic, emerging as an economically preposterous state embroiled with numerous expenditures, ranging from impossible budgets proposed by naive utopian members of the government, and mandatory spending for indigenous education. In the New World, the United States takes a path firmly arm in arm with the Progressive Party, notably after its war with Spain a decade earlier in 1888. In 1892, tensions between the French Third Republic and the German Empire erupted during the Scramble for Africa, and Germany made a pact with Britain and the newly prominent United States, forming the Allianten and engaging in the Franco-German War, which destroyed France to its very core. As American troops lounged in Corsica, British troops hid from the rain in Normandy, and German troops dined in Paris, the French Third Republic was destroyed. Almost all of its overseas possessions were given away, with the exception of Algeria, which was granted to France as an integral part of the state. The price was Algeria and Corsica being demilitarized. Restrictions on the French military and navy made sure of its irrelevance. Combined with the loss of territory, the debt that it had to pay encumbered the state even more than the French Third Republic. So the French Fourth Republic was built to fall, and it did. However, national psychosis and foreign interference with the government creates a lost citizenry who can't hide their problems with cabarets and Chardonnay forever. At first, people flocked to extremists on the left, looking to prominent socialists. Then, a highly charismatic officer with a clean military record, who was surprised by his nation's tragic loss at the hands of the Germans twice, and who conveniently had the family name Bonaparte, founded his Neo-Bonapartist Party. There, elements that were pro-worker, anti-Anglo, anti-German, pro-secularism, and pro-military revival were mixed together, with a healthy dose of constitutional monarchism, and proved themselves to be massively popular with the French people. Meanwhile, the Ottomans were inducted into the Allianten in a formal meeting in Munich in 1905. And while France, newly swimming in nationalistic fervor, slowly rebuilt its armed forces and navy, the Allianten moved for a war with Russia after they saw unfavorable amounts of Russian influence after the scramble for China. This pushed Russia to seek allies, and who else but the up-and-coming Third French Empire that sought a return to former glory. So in secret, the Bipartite formed and looked across the continent. In 1916, after the French had armed over 2 million troops, completely shattering their 300,000 maximum manpower limit, as well as a fleet of almost 60 ships, it went to war, spreading across the Low Countries and circling around into Germany with a series of lightning-fast engagements, focusing on the use of cavalry, mechanized infantry, and chemical warfare. Russia, too, went to war, and thus the Great War began. Here, 2 years later, is the Great War at the height of bipartite control. After this, it all goes downhill with the introductions of armored landships and combined arms into the Allianten. Points of interest. In Quebec, the French descendants have risen up against their foreign government, and the Dominion of Canada has found itself bogged down. The Commonwealth of Mexico is becoming more and more American. The local government is worried, especially its older members who were alive through the Second Mexican-American War, and who witnessed the American conquest and gutting of the country. The United States of Spain is effectively a puppet of the United States, expanding the nation's influence into Europe, much to British and German distaste. Here, what remains of the mostly naval Spanish military engaged with the French, while the American Expeditionary Force rushes from Africa to meet the enemy. Germany's forces are in a desperate last stand in what remains of the Continental Empire. Its other lands are occupied and placed under puppet governments in the meanwhile, and the Kaiser is keen on calling on his allies for support, as keen as he is on trying to escape the bloodied farms, cities, and mines of Brandenburg. The Kingdom of Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs was formed under the neo-Bonapartist occupiers, and the locals were quick to join, rising up to fight the more historical German and Turkish enemies. The Alerton consider this a blight on geopolitics, and if the bipartite lose, the young state can expect to cease to exist. The Dominion of Egypt was created in response to a militarizing Ottoman threat before the war, but came in handy during the war when the neo-Bonapartists surged out of Algeria into Africa. While the Commonwealth of Morocco may be unable to stop the onslaught, proud and untrained Egyptians can try. Out of nowhere, the Kingdom of Bulgaria surprised the world with its ferocious entrance onto the global stage, with an army and foaming demagogue all bent on creating a Bulgarian empire modeled after Alexander the Great, the most famous Bulgarian in human history. While Russian troops were busy occupying Europe and Persia, the Ottomans swooped into the Caucasus to contribute to the war. Persia is split between three powers, and while the Ottomans and British are working together, they fight the Russians in the north of the country. The terrain makes all fighting hellish at best, and the local population is split on who to support, which invader. Following the scramble for China, the United States refused outright colonies, following its policy set in stone by the Roosevelt Doctrine, and instead went to liberate the legation cities, all run by different American business moguls and military men with political ambitions. The collection of city-states serve the United States and her market interests. Japan embroiled itself in a war with a weak, rebel republic, which established itself in Manchuria with Russian support. In response, Russia declared war. The two states have been at war long before the First World War, and only now, with American support, have the Japanese made great strides and expanded past their early victory in capturing Vladivostok. The Dutch government in exile exists in Suriname, and directs all orders to remaining Dutch troops across the empire in the Dutch East Indies and out of Britain. After the Franco-German War, sometimes called the World War, French Indochina was handed over to the Germans, much to Britain's distaste. They wanted that land. Caught with internal strife during the Franco-German War, leading to its neutrality. In the current Great War, the Austro-Hungarian Empire found itself under the thumb of the German Empire to fight against the Russians and French. However, upon the Russian advance into Europe and the death of the Emperor, the failing prison of nations was given an option: the Russians or the French. Slavs in the Empire made their decision. The rump Italian state is still occupied by French troops in the north, all in search for the previous leaders of the country. Where could they have fled? And with all the gold? French claims in the Pacific fell into line after a mutiny of two individuals in the Royal Navy, both from Quebec, took their small fleets and tried to restore the glory. British China is raking in money, even during the war. Ottoman Libya was easy pickings for the neo-Bonapartist forces in Algeria. After the Low Countries became victim of the neo-Bonapartist expansionists, the Germans took control of the Congo quietly and clandestinely. The Commonwealth of the Philippines has become more and more Americanized. "The new frontier," proclaimed newspapers across the land of the free, and slowly but surely, the demographics of the archipelago have been changing. One of the earliest campaigns of the war, the French have managed to hold on to the north of the Commonwealth of Morocco and Gibraltar the entire war. However, newfound American resolve may soon change this. This has been a Persephone Foundation Timeline Reading. Thank you for listening.